Did you know that Salesforce, HubSpot, and MailChimp have been censoring Christian and conservative voices? Sales Nexus is the only email marketing solution engineered to protect your freedom of speech. Sales Nexus is everything your team needs in one easy-to-use package. Sales Nexus has the tools to measure and automate everything. Try Sales Nexus free for 30 days and get 2 users for the price of 1 with promo code SUCCESS.
Our news brief will cover several stories, domestic and international, regarding theology, politics, and economics. There has been another assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and the authorities must do everything in their power to ensure that this man doesn't get Epstein before someone has a chance to question him about it. Things go from bad to worse for the Liberals, who appear to be in for a devastating loss at the next federal election, unless, of course, we use the same voting machines as our neighbors to the south. If you've ever seen the movie Last Action Hero, it's a movie about a boy who gets a magic movie ticket that enables him to enter the movie via another dimension, and then he's living in the film. Well, that's us in the West right now. We've left the normal, real world, and we're living in some sort of sci-fi, horror, tragic comedy hybrid. Well, you might as well grab your popcorn. It's September 19th. I'm Andrew DiBartolo. That's Matt Halleck. This is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey, and welcome back to Liberty Dispatch, broadcasting across enemy lines into the Canadian culture war. We're so glad that you have joined us. As always, once again, we are brought to you by the partnership of Liberty Coalition Canada with Christian Week. LCC exists to establish Christ's justice and righteousness and to defend those who stand, and Christian Week exists to provide a practical, balanced, hope-filled perspective on national and global issues. You can support us on the program by giving a donation to libertycoalitioncanada.com. That's libertycoalitioncanada.com. Go /donate. Go over there, scan that helpful QR code at the bottom of the page there too. That'll take you directly there, and you can leave a tax deductible donation over there. We would really appreciate it. Any comments, questions, concerns, please leave them over at mailbag at libertycoalitioncanada.com. We would love to hear from you, all faithful listeners. Andrew, good to be back with you again, brother. How are you?
I am doing well. There's a lot going on, a lot of good stuff. It is eventful these days. It is eventful in the world. Indeed. Canada is on fire. The world is on fire.
What's new?
And we have the water to put it out, at least so that you don't have to freak out about what's going on. So let's talk about money. Separating money from the state is a core tenet of Bitcoin's ethos, a permissionless network where the individual is in full control and accountable for his own property. Bull Bitcoin, Canada's most trusted exchange since 2013, is built around this ethos and leverages it in its mission to end central banks forever. At Bull Bitcoin, where security and privacy are priority, they take it upon themselves to help empower individuals with the most potent form of money the world has ever known. Head over to mission.bullbitcoin.com/LCC and get started with your account creation. You can also contact Bull's best in the business customer support team at any point throughout the process to request assistance. That's mission.bullbitcoin.com/LCC. Take control of your money. The big stories that we want to cover today are obviously, as I mentioned, the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump and the heating up of Canadian politics with the Liberal NDP coalition dissolving, and actually some of the fallout that comes after that.
Things are getting interesting.
We have quite a bit of news to bring you, so let's get into our news brief. Pope Francis, also known as Pope Frankie the Marxist, he delivered a rather shocking statement recently that has made many Roman Catholics shake their heads in amazement, and even LifeSite News had some strong words to say about it. Here's a video of the incident where, while addressing an interreligious meeting of young people in Singapore, Pope Francis had this to say.
Una delle cose che più mi ha colpito di voi giovani, di questi qui, no? È la capacità del dialogo interreligioso.
One of the things that struck me about all of you here is your ability to engage in interreligious dialogue.
E questo è molto importante.
And this is very important.
Perché se voi incominciate a litigare, la mia religione è più importante della tua, la mia è la vera, la tua non è vera, dove ci porta questo?
Because if we start to fight amongst ourselves and saying, my religion is more important than yours, my religion is true, yours is not, where will that lead us?
E ci vuole litigare.
Yes, it's okay to discuss and to...
Tutte le religioni sono un cammino per arrivare a Dio.
Because every religion is a way to arrive at God.
Sono, dirò una comparazione, sono come diverse lingue, diversi idiomi per arrivare lì.
Sort of a comparison, an example would be they're sort of like different languages in order to arrive at God.
Ma Dio è Dio per tutti.
But God is God for all.
E come Dio è Dio per tutti, noi siamo tutti figli di Dio.
And if God is God for all, then we're all sons and daughters of God.
Ma il mio Dio è più importante del tuo.
But my God is more important than your God.
È vero quello?
Is that true?
C'è un solo Dio lì. E noi sono idiomi, cammino, lingue per arrivare a Dio.
There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God.
Qualcuno è Sikh, qualcuno musulmano, qualcuno
Sikh, Muslim,
Hindi, qualcuno cristiano,
Indo,
ma sono
Christian.
diversi cammini.
There are different paths.
Understood?
So part of the reason why we're bringing this up is obviously a big part of our show is covering news as it breaks out in culture and politics. And this is primarily, at least it appears to be primarily a kind of theological, isolated thing. But the reality is, number one, what he has said there, and a lot of what comes from Pope Francis is heavily, heavily motivated by his politics, which are Marxist. So there's a huge political bent. There are also massive implications nationally, because if what he's saying is true, then we need to be indiscriminate, for example, in the people we let into our country, or the worldviews that we let into our country, or the fact that if your God and your religion and my religion lead to the same God, then why can't we have all of our worldviews, all of our cultural religious beliefs in some melting pot? That will actually tear a country apart, which is what we're seeing in Canada. And this relativism, this thinking that ultimately always will bring us to the truth of the Enlightenment is precisely the kind of secularism that has driven the West. And the reality is it can't produce anything, and it's created a vacuum which has now been filled by the woke behemoth. So that thinking has significant political, cultural implications that extend beyond merely a talk about the Bible.
Oh, absolutely. This is the UN's dream right here, right? Some sort of ooey gooey, squishy ecumenicism that's, universalistic in nature or inclusivistic, as Pope Frankie was talking about there. That's the type of Prisca theologia that's very theosophical. It's that the idea that again, all religions are trying to feel their way to God, that's the great gnosis, that's the great piece of knowledge, is that all religions are actually the same thing and they're pointing to the same God. They're just different languages, essentially, as he's saying there. So that's some other religion, Andrew, but it's certainly not biblical Christianity.
So some might say, okay, maybe he misspoke, but the reality is just earlier this week, in another video addressing another group of youth, Pope Francis doubled down. This time he said this, quote, "I invite you to learn together to discern the signs of the times." Well, if only he could. "Contemplate the difference of your traditions like a richness God wants to be. Unity is not uniformity, and diversity of your cultural and religious identities is a gift of God," close quote. Even though biblically the prevalence of idolatry is a curse upon a land from God. But aside from that,
don't get caught up on the particulars, Andrew. Come on, man.
Don't let this kind of in summary, this kind of squishy, we can all get along, we all ultimately have the same goal. This kind of thinking has infected the quote unquote conservative freedom movement in Canada. And as we saw in my discussion with friend of the show, Bruce Party, the reality is we don't all have the same goal, and we're not about reaching that goal the same way. So we might as well be honest about the exclusive, definite nature of the kingdom of God and the mission of Christ, as opposed to trying to accommodate and make everyone happy. That's just not going to happen. So we need to be done with that kind of thinking.
Exactly. And I mean, what Pope Francis talks about is a totally different religion than biblical Christianity, and it's certainly a different religion than even historical Catholicism. So make of that what you will, Catholics, but I'm thankful that we, as Protestants, we've thrown off the yoke of the Pope a long time ago. Anyways, Andrew, left-wing agitators connected to the pro-Palestinian group, the People's University for Gaza at UBC, stuck a severed pig head on a fence at the University of British Columbia, along with signs that demanded pigs off our campus. So things are really looking good on university campuses across our country. This is what the picture looked like. So there you go. That's some pretty intense activism. Some pretty nasty stuff there. It's hard to know what to make of all this, Andrew. So apparently the group has made a list of demands and posted it on Instagram, as all serious groups do. Quote, this is what it says, quote, "Pigs off campus refers to demand for on-campus safety. Keep cops off our campus. The RCMP has systematically and by design engaged in suppression and violence against BIPOC and other marginalized communities. Refer to our pinned demands to read further." So there you go. It's seriously heating up on university campuses as all sorts of mass protests and angst and all sorts of things carry on, even into the new school year here, Andrew, across our nation.
Yes. So a British Columbia hospital now features a vending machine distributing free crack pipes and safe snorting kits. In an August 26th video, Conservative Party of BC candidate Gwen O'Mahony exposed that the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital, which operates in the district in which he's running, is distributing free crack pipes and snorting kits at a vending machine outside its emergency room. Here's the video evidence.
Let's go get a free crack pipe and cocaine smoking kit. So now we can learn how to snort cocaine with this informational video right here. So I'm outside the Nanaimo Hospital, and I was able to get a crack inhalation kit and a cocaine snorting kit. Unfortunately, the crack pipes were out, which is no surprise because crack pipes can be traded for drugs. All of these items you can get for free at a vending machine located just directly over there outside of the Nanaimo Hospital emergency room.
Wow, who knew, Andrew?
Who knew?
That's some new technology at Nanaimo Emergency. I've never seen
get your candy bar, some chips, and a crack pipe.
Very, very diverse. I think that's what they mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. It includes everything, including hard drugs. Anyways, Rebel News reporter David Menzies was arrested by Toronto police last March outside the King Edward Hotel while trying to ask pro-Hamas protesters questions in a public space. Recently, Menzies was back in court for another false arrest, this time for supposed trespassing. Menzies was covering the pro-October 7th anti-Israel protests at the Nathan Phillips Square last April. Officer Chang arrested Menzies for trespassing. Chang also tried to smash Menzies' cell phone. That charge against Menzies was tossed in a Toronto courtroom. It appears that they arrest him, violate his rights. They know they have nothing. They drop the charges, but his freedoms have still been violated all the same. So that seems to be operational business as usual for Toronto police when it comes to
there
reporters.
was another video of him confronting someone, and then when the officer arrested him, the aide for this particular political figure was taking photographs of Menzies' clipboard and flipping through it. And I mean, that's a violation, but it only goes one way. So more to talk about in the realm of medical world. Dr. Laura Sutherland, vice chair of the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services faculty at the Royal College of Psychiatrists in Scotland, said the extent of the COVID lockdown's legacy on young children is not yet fully known. We've been saying this for years as well. Writing in the Sunday Post, she said this, quote, "The pandemic has significant ongoing impacts." Just imagine it's a Scottish woman, by the way, who's reading this. It'll be much more exciting and enjoyable than my voice. "The pandemic has significant ongoing impacts on many babies and children's well-being and development, including those born post-pandemic, and on the ability of services to meet their needs. More under fives are falling behind expected outcomes, and many services are reaching a crisis point where they are unable to identify or meet families' needs. Society still doesn't fully understand the longer-term impacts on children of all ages, including babies born during the pandemic. It is starting to become clearer that there is increased need for specialist support, from speech and language to emotional support," close quote. Friends, we haven't even opened up the lid of the dumpster yet.
No.
To look inside and see the mounds of maggot-filled garbage that are the consequences of the COVID lockdowns. We'll be sorting through this mess for decades.
Yeah.
4 decades.
And we've said that all along. And we've also said the outcomes are going to be bad. And it just seems like the preliminary data that we have been getting just a few years removed from the inanity of the lockdowns is catastrophic. So some of us were saying that during the pandemic, Andrew, and it's not as though hindsight was 20/20 here, but I'm sure that's what a bunch of people will say.
Thank goodness that Zuckerberg admits that he was wrong, even though he suppressed all this information early on, which created the devastation, which, unfortunately, saying I did a boo-boo doesn't undo the devastation. So it's a good thing, though, that now he's covering his own butt. So good for him.
Well, we can only hope more people will wake up. But, the devastating impacts will be long felt for generations to come. And we can only hope that we will learn something moving forward. But it doesn't appear like that's the case. Anyways, a new scientific paper has been published out of Japan titled Multivariate analysis rejects the theory of human-caused atmospheric carbon dioxide increase. The sea surface temperature rules. That's an interesting title. Here is the entire conclusion from the paper. Quote, the global SST, that's the sea surface temperature, has been the main determinant of annual increases in atmospheric CO2 concentration since 1959. No human impact was observed. That's pretty significant. This result indicates that human efforts to curb CO2 emissions have been, at least in the past, meaningless. Okay, that's not great. Moreover, the theory that modern global warming and climate change are caused by human-emitted CO2 is also wrong. Well, I could have told you that. Irrelevantly to the credibility of the story that modern warming and climate change are occurring more dramatically than those years in the past. So there you go, Andrew. It turns out those of us who saying the climate hoax is a climate hoax, well, we're right too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that kind of should be the motto of the tinfoil hat wearer.
Yeah.
We're right.
Yeah.
We were right.
The scientists will eventually catch up to the conspiracy theorists at some point.
Yeah. Maybe at some point, then they'll just change the game. So let's move on. That's our news brief, friends. According to JP Morgan Chase, roughly a third of new businesses quit within their first 2 years. But with the support of a proven franchise system, on average, a franchise business has a higher survival rate than an independent business. ProFleet Care is a franchise organization that is dedicated to helping people find financial freedom and take control of their livelihood through good workmanship and honest business practices. With a 40-year proven business model, ProFleet Care is a unique and comparatively low startup cost business in the growing rust protection industry. Low initial investment, low overhead cost, good margins, training and business mentorship, and an established brand are some of the benefits that come with joining ProFleet Care. If you're interested in joining ProFleet Care's franchise organization, go to profleetcare.com or call Greg Laurie at 905-741-5316. Now, obviously, the story in the news is the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Now, this comes right off the bat from the Gateway pundit. Quote, shots were fired at Trump's golf club in West Palm Beach on Sunday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. as the former president was playing a round of golf with real estate investor Steve Witkoff. It is unclear if Ruth was able to fire his weapon, AK-47, with the scope, or if the Secret Service shot him first after they identified him as a threat. Officials have confirmed that the gunman, identified as Ryan Wesley Ruth, targeted President Trump. The FBI is calling Sunday's shooting an attempted assassination. Ruth left behind a GoPro, an AK-47, and 2 backpacks on the perimeter of Trump's golf club. Here, by the way, is the body cam footage of the arrest of the would-be assassin.
I do want to show you the body cam of the arrest that happened yesterday of the suspect of the attempted Trump assassination. This is the body cam that we are just getting in, and we are learning new information from that court appearance today. The suspect on former President Trump laughed and smiled ahead of his first court appearance today in Florida. Ryan Wesley Ruth, wearing all jail scrubs and shackles on his wrists and ankles, walked into court and smiled and laughed about 3 to 4 times as he was speaking to his court-appointed attorney before the hearing began. No cameras were permitted inside the federal court hearing in West Palm Beach, Florida, regarding charges of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number.
Yeah, smiling and laughing. Little does he know that he has a 5 o'clock appointment for a Clinton-style suicide in prison. So he won't be smiling for forever. So we also have this photo we want to show you. Whatever. Come at me, bro. Come at me, Hillary. Let's whatever. So We have a photo of the sniper's nest set up by Ruth, and you can see where he was before the gate. So I want to put that up and leave that up there while I go through a little bit more details. He pushed the muzzle of his rifle through the fence. As you can see there, that's where he was. At the fence line at Trump's golf course before Secret Service agents fired at him. Law enforcement said the gunman was about 300 to 500 yards away from Trump. He was hiding in the shrubbery when he pointed his rifle with a scope through the fence. According to law enforcement, Secret Service agents were 1 to 2 holes ahead of Trump when they spotted the muzzle of the rifle. According to reporters for the AP, there are several areas around the perimeter of Trump's golf course where golfers are visible from the fence line. It appears that the would-be assassin exploited a vulnerable part of the property's perimeter. Ruth ran out of the bushes and escaped in a black vehicle, but was arrested in Martin County, and that's the body cam footage that we just showed you. So this is a pretty wild story that will obviously get buried again like the first one, because there are more important things to worry about, like the Ukraine. That's apparently
well,
a bigger
it
deal
turns
than
out Ruth was really worried about the Ukraine. So,
yes.
Wonder if that had anything to do with that whole situation.
Well, that we have a little clip about that in a bit.
Yes, indeed. A little foreshadowing for you. So, as you would expect, the legacy media, in responding to this attempt, they were very sympathetic to Donald Trump. They thought, unbelievable. 2 times in 8 weeks, somebody's trying to kill President Trump. Maybe we should tone back our ghoulish rhetoric and that sort of stuff. But if you thought that, you would be wrong, obviously. So here's a ghoulish news story for you from the New York Times. And this is the original story headline that they posted about the attempted assassination attempt on Donald J. Trump. And it reads as follows. Man arrested at Trump golf course had a history of crusading for causes. Interviews, records, and self-aggrandizing books suggest that Ryan Ruth, a peripatetic builder, saw himself as an influential participant in monumentous world events. So there you go, Andrew. Just some dude.
Why was he arrested? Was he arrested because he was streaking, like he was flashing them?
Yeah, no idea. From that, maybe he was protesting for Palestine, and that was why he was arrested.
By the way, but if you've never seen that, it's because I screenshotted that when the Times article first broke, because I knew, like a lot of people knew, that they would quickly change it, because you can't be too honest or you can't be too corrupt. So if you look up the link to the article, you won't find what you just saw, which is the original article. What you'll see actually is this, which is what it was changed to less than 12 hours later.
Oh, now I know what happened, Andrew. Suspect in
it's still only an apparent, though. It's a parent.
Yeah. And it's funny because at this point, I think it was pretty obvious, but, they're willing to trust the experts and government officials like the FBI and stuff, unless if it's something that, would potentially cast Trump in a positive light or, be somewhat sympathetic to Trump. Yeah. They don't want to do that. So suspect in a
zero trust
Trump assassination plot crusaded for many causes. There we go, Andrew. Yeah. That's a little bit
zero
closer
trust.
To the truth.
For the legacy media, because the first thing was what they wanted you to believe, which was downplaying. The same thing that CNN did. Oh, Trump fell over at the rally in Pennsylvania. And then they quickly engage in what the Ministry of Truth does, which is a little bit of memory holing and a little bit of doublespeak, but we caught them. But this is why you can't trust them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's also... Andrew, I think one of the most disturbing parts of it is just how they, the language that they use to describe a clear madman who tried to kill Donald Trump. And I think that really I think that just really reveals where their true loyalties are. So it's amazing. It's amazing to see that they describe him in almost, I wouldn't say glowing terms, but certainly not not the way that they would describe, I'm sure, hitman if they were coming after Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. So this is the language that they use in the article. Quote, how Mr. Ruth, a peripatetic activist, they really like that word peripatetic, and building contractor with an extensive criminal record, came to possess a semi-automatic rifle, learn of Mr. Trump's weekend whereabouts, and wait for him on the edge of Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida, remains unknown. Mr. Ruth has been a serial crusader for causes large and small, dating back to at least 1996, when he campaigned against graffiti in Greensboro, North Carolina, where he lived for decades. In December 2002, he was convicted of a felony for, quote, possession of a weapon of mass destruction. Okay, that's intense, according to the criminal complaint. That year, he was arrested in Greensboro after barricading himself inside a building with a fully automatic weapon. Mr. Ruth's other criminal charges in North Carolina include possession of a stolen motor vehicle, possession of stolen goods, and several driving violations. Yet, records show that he was a concerned citizen interested in local causes. And that's a very strange way of covering that man. I also saw, Andrew, the comment from his son, who also looks like a total nut job. And he came up, no, this type of assassination, that's totally out of character from my dad, even though we're learning more and more that it's totally within a long history of the type of behavior that his dad was engaged in. So really, really nutty stuff there from Ryan Ruth. But the story doesn't end here, because we also have to apologize for what we're going to play for you, which is not the American version of the mainstream media, but our mainstream media here at home with the CTV news. And this is how they covered
Get your barf bag.
This is how they covered the situation with the assassination, the second one of Donald Trump.
Gun charges have been laid against a suspect involved in an apparent assassination attempt against Donald Trump over the weekend. Brian Abel joins us from Florida with new details that we're learning today. Brian.
Hey, Melissa. Yeah, affidavit filed in court today shows that an FBI agent says cell phone data of the suspect showed that he may have been in this area for upwards of 12 hours before that confrontation with the Secret Service. That is just one piece of evidence that investigators are looking at to determine some big questions, including, did he truly know that the former president would be here when he was, and did he act alone?
His facial affect was so flat.
Keep walking!
His demeanor was relaxed.
The sheriff of Florida's Martin County describing the moment Ryan Wesley Routh was taken into custody Sunday for what investigators believe was an apparent assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump at his West Palm Beach golf course.
It looked like somebody that just left a church picnic and was on his way home.
Instead, Routh was on his way to jail, and Monday morning he was officially charged with 2 federal counts, including possession of a firearm while a convicted felon and for having a weapon with an obliterated serial number. Court observers say Routh indicated to the judge that he couldn't afford his own attorney. His public defender declined to comment. Prosecutors want Routh, who owns a small construction business in Hawaii, detained until trial, calling him a flight risk. That hearing is set for next week. Public records show Routh has been involved in a number of court cases since the 1990s. On social media, Routh is an outspoken Trump critic and a fervent supporter of Ukraine, even traveling to Kyiv in 2022.
There you go. And he was in, as they showed you at the end of there, a weird propaganda video for the Azov Battalion, which is an extremely white supremacist, like neo-Nazi militia group in the Ukraine.
Now, I hope you're all wearing your tinfoil hats.
Well, I've always got mine on.
Here we go. I'll give you a second to go get it. Okay, pause the video. The Azov Battalion is funded by, allegedly, BlackRock.
Yeah, I've heard
the first assassination attempt on Donald Trump was a person who happened to be in a BlackRock promotional video.
It is pretty weird.
Now, if there's one side of the political spectrum that would be cozied up to BlackRock, it would be the Democrats. And if there are some people who would be most cozy to BlackRock, it would be the same kind of people that make sure that non-suicidal people hang themselves in impossible manners in the prison when all the guards are asleep and the security cameras stop working. I'm just saying.
Well,
add a few gems to your tinfoil crown.
Yes,
there might be more going on here than you think.
We can't obviously verify.
I mean, if you and I show up dead, that's all the truth you need. If tomorrow we happen to we suicided, then it's verified. But even if it doesn't happen, maybe it's true. So,
yeah, no, it's definitely fishy. And the amazing part, Andrew, is how I feel like people have been pretty ho-hum about this situation. The 45th president of the United States, who is currently in a neck-and-neck race to become the 47th president of the United States of America, he's had an assassination attempted on him twice in the last 8 weeks.
But we also covered a story last week or 2 weeks ago that there was another person who was planning the assassination of high-ranking officials, almost certainly including Trump, that was thwarted by the FBI before anything happened.
And that was the Iran
2.5, maybe 3.
One.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
It's heating up, and speaking of heating up, okay, so temperatures on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
So with the approaching American election, there's a lot of uncertainty hanging over the market. For long-term value investors, this uncertainty is creating real opportunities to generate outsized returns. At Rocklinc, they know how to seize on opportunities and market volatility by building portfolios of excellent businesses that can weather these turbulent times. Rocklinc has been growing and protecting investors' capital for almost 15 years. Call our friends at Rocklinc now and get your investments working for you. You can reach them at 905-631-5462 or email them at info@rocklinc.com. That's Rocklinc with the C, info@rocklinc.com. Now, here's Canada. We're not dealing with our elected officials getting shot at. Nevertheless, things are heating up in Canada as well. Things continue to spiral downward for the Liberals, even more after Jagmeet Singh declared that he was ending the NDP Liberal coalition 2 weeks ago. Justin Trudeau's national campaign director, Jeremy Broadhurst, announced recently that he is resigning. Although he had previously informed Trudeau, his decision was a shock to many of Trudeau's senior staff. This is more bad news for the Liberal. Broadhurst's decision has apparently taken Trudeau's chief of staff, Katie Telford, by surprise. Quoting an anonymous source, the Toronto Star said that Broadhurst had lost confidence in Trudeau, and he didn't think that he'd be able to win the next election. He invited Trudeau to find a replacement national campaign director who actually believes that Trudeau can win the election. That's kind of a central qualification for the national director. You believe your guy can win, he doesn't think Trudeau can win.
You might want to try Ryan Ruth. That's maybe the only person at this stage who thinks Trudeau can win.
So other sources indicated that Broadhurst had admitted he couldn't go through another federal election and that he didn't think the Liberal campaign headquarters would be up to the task. That election, officially slated for October 2025, could come a lot sooner now that Trudeau is definitely in a minority government position. Of course, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre is using this as an opportunity to engage in a little bit of grandstanding and political posturing himself because he's a brilliant politician and a slithery snake of a man. He told reporters this at a press conference, quote, I'm announcing the common sense conservatives will put forward a non-confidence motion at the earliest possible opportunity, close quote. Poilievre said that it is, quote, put up or shut up time for the NDP, close quote, under its leader Jagmeet Singh, who pulled his official support for Trudeau's Liberals on September 4th. Poilievre said, quote, if you're pulling out, you have to vote non-confidence. If you don't, you're still in the agreement, no matter what your video stunt would have everyone else believe, close quote. He then questioned whether the NDP will vote non-confidence to, quote, bring down the costly coalition and trigger a carbon tax election, close quote, or if Singh instead will sell out Canadians again. I have to say, I was watching some footage from the House of Commons, and obviously it's a brilliant political tactic, but for someone like me that knows that he's really a liberal, God-hating, pro-baby murder, pro-sodomy, pro-globalist, pro-mass immigration, pro-big government kind of guy, so I don't buy it. He had this thing where he kept saying, will this prime minister continue to obfuscate, or will he axe the tax? And he would do this thing where he would like axe the tax.
Yeah.
He's got his whole hand motion. It's basically the same thing as The Rock doing if you smell, or like Hogan doing brother. Like he's got his whole WWF shtick, and he's working it, man. He's working it really well. I mean, he's a snake. He's a devil in blue, but he's winning some hearts. Boy, people are really falling for it.
Tim Wall's wife doing the turn the page thing, which looks like bye-bye Donald Trump. How come? Question. This is not in the script, but how come every progressive woman of the 40s to the 50s talks to everyone like they're a 4-year-old in preschool? Like,
I know the answer. You want to know the answer?
I do want to know the answer, Andrew.
Okay.
I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. White liberal women are the worst.
Yes. Maybe we have to get a shirt. Maybe we have to get a shirt.
That is the scientific. Like, there's no the evidence.
Yeah.
There's general consensus. The evidence, they trust the science. We have our models.
Yeah.
And our modeling has shown us that white liberal women are the worst.
Yeah. No. And so condescending. And it's so much schmarm. Anyways, Poilievre wasn't the only member of parliament to comment on the dissolution of the commie coalition between the NDP and the Liberals, and the potential of a vote of no confidence in order to trigger a federal election. The Bloc Québécois had comments on all of this, which were quite different than Poilievre, which was of no surprise to anyone at all who's paying attention. Bloc MP Martin Shampoo. Shampoo? Is it shampoo? I don't know.
I think we should start calling him Martin Head and Shoulders.
Head and Shoulders.
That's his new name. His nickname is Martin Head and Shoulders.
I'm not good at
Shampoo.
French.
Shampoo.
Or shampoo.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He
anyways,
sounds like French.
Anyways, that guy, Head and
That's
Shoulders.
why I like you, Matt.
Head and Shoulders over there. He told the CBC News network, Power and Politics, that the Bloc won't support a non-confidence motion if it's nothing than more than a critique on the federal carbon tax. Quote, it would be serving the conservative agenda, and that's not what the Bloc is here for. No, because they're also progressive secularist commies. Champeau told host David Cochrane, quote, I don't think the Bloc will support a motion from the Conservatives based on the carbon tax. Honestly, I think they'll have to do better than that. The Bloc doesn't consider the federal carbon tax a priority issue because, why? The levy doesn't apply to Quebec. Thanks, Bloc Québécois. Way to love your neighbor. The provincial government instead has implemented a cap and trade system. And there is still more bad news for the Liberals, who lost 2 by-elections on Monday, which is not a surprise, actually. Everybody suspected it. But the shocking reality is one came in Montreal at a Liberal stronghold, and the other one in Winnipeg, which was always going to go NDP. With results in, Liberal candidates lost in both contests. In the perpetually safe seat in Montreal, that's the real shocker, of LaSalle Émard Verdun, the Liberal candidate lost to the Bloc Québécois Louis-Philippe Sauvé, maybe a relative of our friend Brian Sauvé, in a tight 3-way race. In the Manitoba riding of Winnipeg's Elmwood, Transcona, The NDP's Leila Dance defeated the Conservative Party with Liberals a distant third. In Montreal, Liberal candidate Laura Palestini had insisted, quote, "It's about me. It's not about the PM. I will let myself be the prime focus of this election." Former Justice Minister David Lametti represented the riding until he resigned from Parliament just days after a federal court justice announced that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergency Act in response to the Freedom Convoy protests was unconstitutional. Lametti had been a vocal supporter of using the legislation to crush the peaceful protests, and it turns out he was crushed by the consequences of his unconstitutional action. But over and over again, what are we seeing in these by-elections? We're seeing that the polls, the general feeling of where this election, whenever it comes, is headed, is indeed the case. The Liberals cannot buy people off this time. It really does feel like the Trudeau regime is going to come to a crashing end, and even his biggest supporters are jumping ship, which just shows you the type of people they are, right? These people are progressive, leftist, communist ideologues, but they're totally willing to throw anybody under the bus and jump off the ship.
Well,
that's
exactly what we saw in the French Revolution. Right?
Oh, yeah.
No one's head is safe from the guillotine. Now, even though this is the case, though, Matt, yet we still have this final story to discuss. And despite the fact that the Liberals are experiencing loss after loss, that Canadians are fed up with their corruption, they still have both the legacy media and a judiciary that will go to bat for them and protect their own. So This is a rather wild story that we have from the Counter Signal. The commissioner leading Canada's public inquiry into foreign interference stated that she will not release the names of those suspected of colluding with China. Of course not. Protect the traitors. That's what we do, right? That's our play. So Justice Marie-Josée Hogue made her statement on Monday, the first day the inquiry resumed since the summer break. Canadians have been demanding accountability for months, which they're never going to get from our elected officials because they don't know what that word means. They're asking for Hogue to name the traitors after the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians released a partially redacted report, which alleged that some MPs have helped foreign governments interfere in Canadian politics, notably China and India. And speaking of the alleged traitorous MPs, the NSI COP report stated that, quote, now listen to this, some of the activities may be illegal but are unlikely to lead to criminal charges, owing to Canada's failure to address the long-standing issue of protecting classified information and methods of judicial processes, close quote. Another part read that many activities, quote, could not be construed as regular diplomatic lobbying, close quote. It continued, quote, rather, they clearly met the definition of foreign interference as described in Section 2 of the CSIS Act, contrary to Canada's national interest and deceptive, clandestine, or threatening, close quote. Additionally, the report indicated that foreign agents are targeting Canada's election systems and election officials. Now, this is what we're going to see, though. Nothing's probably going to happen, which is our justice system's way of saying the same thing that FBI Director Comey said with regard to Hillary Clinton engaged in very illegal activity that she tried to cover up by cleaning the hard drives, and they weren't going to punish her for it. But they noted, I remember the press conference where Comey said, so we're not going to punish her. However, this doesn't apply to anyone. That if anyone else tried this and not another swamp creature from the state, that they would definitely get in trouble. So if you were to do this, if you were to work with foreign interference actors to usurp Canada and commit treason, that would be a problem. But if you're one of their friends, you're fine. Because in Canada, if you protest state tyranny, that gets you 6 years in prison. But if you commit actual treason to help a foreign enemy, that gets you judicial protection and probably a pay raise as you retire off into the sunset. Remember when I said Canada? Remember we said Canada's on fire?
Yeah.
It wasn't like Canada's on fire like, oh, my little campfire. Canada's on fire like a raging forest fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's top to bottom. All of it is thoroughly corrupted and thoroughly rotten.
This is a total unbelievable scandal that people who legitimately meet the threshold for what CSIS would consider treasonous acts as public government officials, they're not even, their names aren't going to be released. They're not going to be held to account. And presumably they can just continue on in the office. They can just continue on, maybe serve 6 years, and then we'll pay their pension for the rest of their lives so they can, sail off from the sunset, go back to China, hang out, force the Chinization of the whole world. I don't know. I'm not sure what it's going to look like.
But
Andrew,
don't you dare give $50 to the Freedom Convoy, because if you do, your name will be doxxed and your bank account will be frozen.
No,
so you can help China overthrow Canada. That's fine. You'll get a bonus for that. But give $50 to some truckers protesting lawless mandates. We're coming for your bank accounts. That is the social apartheid in Canada. That is the two-class system that exists.
Yeah.
You have the elites, and then you have the regulars like us.
Yeah.
So
and
my advice to you would be, friend, just lean into being a regular. You know what? It's actually better. Just lean into being a regular person. Just lean into not delving into, not giving into the temptation to either join the corruption or also to respond in anger and violence. Just be faithful where you are. Lean into being a regular old person. Do the daily work of obedience and kingdom building, and God will bless it. God will bless you. He will give you joy. He will give you peace. And the enemies of God will one day come under the fury of his wrath as he crushes them and sends them to be separate from him for all eternity for their glad rebellion against him. But for those who are his people, Malachi says the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, and we will be rewarded for our faithfulness, though not in this life. So take heart. Don't be discouraged by Canada being on fire, because I tell you, there is a fire coming for God's enemies that is much greater than the symbolic fire that overtakes Canada right now. So we can take heart in that.
No, exactly. Kiss the sun. Political officials, kiss the sun lest you perish in the way, lest you get smoked. I think that's Ben Merkel's translation. Lest you get smoked. And that's the real serious thing, because God hates partiality. He hates it. He absolutely abominates it. And we're seeing that over and over. All these WEF, globalist, progressive commies, whenever they get in power, they set up a two-tier justice system. We see that with two-tier Keir in the UK. We see that with the push with the Democrats and how they, go hard after their political opponents like Donald Trump, but then they let actual rioters and terrorists off the hook. And we see it here in our own nation. There's two justice systems depending on what side of political correctness you fall on. And that's an abomination to God and totally abhorrent. And it should be just a stench in every Christian's nostrils. And we should work hard to get involved, like you say, Andrew, in changing our nation and changing the culture, and most importantly, in changing the root religious core of our society to one that loves and reveres justice and wants to honor God and order a society in appropriate ways. Equality before the law is something that our forefathers fought hard for, and it was for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Until next time, God bless.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you in partnership with Liberty Coalition Canada and Christian Week, and has been produced by SDG Media. You can find all things Liberty Coalition Canada at libertycoalitioncanada.com.